I think one of the things that I struggle with is when parents will tell me, and this is about school, but about everything, because in your book, you're not just talking about school. You're talking about, how this looks in extracurriculars and friendships and everything. And is parents will share with me their history and say, I went through this struggle. I had this problem. My family did this for me, and that's why I'm successful. And or I achieved, or I was on the basketball team, and that's why I'm successful. And I always call them survivor stories, because they're taking their story and just like placing it on everybody else. What did you find? And I think I know you talked to families and parents. What was the feedback you got from parents about why they're doing what they're doing?
Yeah, that's very interesting. What you're talking about is something it's related to something I call in the book the encore effect,
Yes.
meaning that every child really wants to be able to replicate their own childhoods for their kids one day. And that's been the American dream, right? To at least do as well as your parents, if not better. And parents are now seeing a first generation millennials who are not doing as well. So they are feeling that pressure, and they are wondering, what can they do to safeguard their children's economic futures. So what I am hearing is the anxiety and the fear about the future. AI's on the scene. We don't know what 50% of the jobs we're preparing our kids for will be. What role will higher education play in their lives? So all of this uncertainty for parenting, for parents today, they're absorbing it, and it's coming out in their parenting, the fears.
It is. And it's interesting because I wish we had 8 hours with you, because there's so many other factors at play. Like Todd, I work with women and girls, and Todd works with men and boys. He has a men's group that he runs. And so we're always coming, not at each other. We meet in the middle, but his group is very worried about boys, being left behind, which is a real thing when you look at the data and you look at that, these, like you said, the jobs are falling away, it's real. Suicide rates are high, even for grown men. But as someone who works with women and girls, I'm also seeing things being taken away from them, and them not getting, we look at data and we say, hey, but there's this many more girls in college, but it doesn't really result in more CEOs or more politicians being, it's not meaning anything. So all these other, factors come into play too, where parents are seeing, I'm hearing from our group, from the people we talk with, that people are very worried about their sons. Have you been hearing that?
I have been hearing that. I've been hearing about sons, though, and daughters.
Good.
I wrote an article about sons for the Wall Street Journal a couple of months ago, talking about how, if we are going to be raising sons who can contend with the uncertainties in the future, that helping them get language and talk through their emotions, and, give them models. It's important for the men in their lives to be doing that work.
Yes.
Because if it's the women, if it's the mother who's talking about emotions, we further entrench the idea that's something women do. So I think it's really important for the men to be modeling that.
Totally.
You are
Todd,
preaching
this is like the
to the
killing.
choir.
So frustrated.
Have you seen The Mask You Live In? It's an old documentary, but it's really
Yes.
good. Yeah. So we hosted a screening. We marketed towards the dads and all that.
We hosted in Elmhurst.
Elmhurst, where we live, movie theater, fun, spend $10, go watch a really good documentary, and then have a discussion afterwards. And we had a few hundred people in the audience, and 90% of them were women. And I get so frustrated, and I just have to keep moving along, trying to talk about this stuff and call men in instead of call them out, even though I'm calling them out right now because they didn't show up to the stupid move. But there's a million examples of that. And I think you're right. I think that us men have to step up our game to model the behavior that we want, because to your point, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Richard Reeves and his work, and how the man has to evolve in a way, and you can talk about pink jobs and all these things that, it's not cool to be a nurse or a teacher or whatever. Those are going to be the jobs that are available. And if we don't raise our men to know that it's okay to be a teacher or a nurse, then they're going to be sitting in the basement, smoking weed, playing games. That might be a little overly
stretch,
but that's
right.
where they go.
Yeah.
So
I talk about this in the book. I don't talk about it as explicitly as we're talking about it now, but I talk about how as parents, we are, told that the ultimate goal of parenting is to raise self-reliant, independent adults. But actually what I found in my research and my reporting was that there was a more profound lesson we needed to give to our boys and to our girls, which is the skills of interdependence. That means being able to rely on others and have others rely on us in healthy ways. And too often, we really hold on to this stoic individualism as this is the goal when it really isn't. And I will give credit to my husband, who really models this healthy interdependence. When he's going through something at work or something personal, he shows our kids who he reaches out to, has conversations in the living room about it. They breeze in and they breeze out and they see it. And we've been explicit with our kids, our boys and our daughter, that if there are issues in our house, here are 3 families. One is my sister, the other 2 are close family friends. Here are the trusted adults in your life who, as parents, we trust, and you can say everything to. There are no secrets in our homes. You can say anything you want to these adults. And does it give my kids this really firm safety net and this idea that, we don't have to go through this life alone.
It's it's such a good reminder. So on Friday, I was driving home and just had a lot of stuff happen. There was some things that happened in my life that gave me a really crappy day to deal with. And Cathy was, I don't
dealing with some of those.
You were
crappy
dealing
things.
with some of those things. And I stopped at my friend's house, whom I love, and I've known him for 10 or 15 years. And I just said, dude, let me just vent for a little bit. Now I'm proud of the fact, because in the old days, I would have been like, nope, I could figure this out. It's all going to be in my head, blah, blah, blah. And I got sad and mad, and I emoted a little bit with him holding that space. But what I didn't do is tell my one daughter who lives underneath this roof, yeah, I was having a really bad day, and I went to my buddy Frank, and he just listened to me. And that's a wonderful reminder for me. Thank you for reminding me that it's not just to do it, but to model it and make sure, because I do a lot of that, but I don't necessarily bring my kids into that. So I'm glad your husband does that, and it's something I have since forgotten. So thank you.
Yeah, Jenny, I love that part of the book, because not only do you say, here's people you can talk to, but that's okay with me. Like, I want you to expand. I did the same thing when my girls turned 13. I had a party for them and invited all the women. So it was actually just women. It wasn't just the families. It was women who are important in our lives, family, friends, neighbors, and said, these people are your people and you use them however you want. And obviously my friends were like, yeah, we're here. And my girls have. There's things that they go to other people, and that's fine with me, because that's community building, that's good. And so will you tell the story in the book about the flower that someone left at someone's door?
I love this story.
Yeah.
So I went up to Wilton, Connecticut, which is about an hour-ish from New York City. And I interviewed a few women in the community. And one woman I interviewed talked about how when she first moved to Wilton, she didn't know anybody. And her next door neighbor asked her for a cup of flour. And so she gave it to her, and I felt all warm and like cozy inside, that I was building community and these were my neighbors. And then the next day she drove up and there was a 2-pound bag of flour leaning against her door. And she thought to herself, how the hell, like, people can't even have a cup of flour hanging over their heads.
Yeah.
You got to repay that favor immediately and so generously. And, I've done stuff like that. I don't have this in the book, but I remember one of my neighbors, we were away during a big storm, and my neighbor took photos of a tree that fell. And she said, I checked and made sure it didn't touch the house. There was no damage. And I thought, how delightful is that? So when we came home, I brought her a bottle of wine as a thank you. And she said, I don't want the wine. She said, that's what neighbors do. And I was a little embarrassed, but I have learned to accept the help and to not repay it immediately.
Totally.
Allow it to build.